Ruler School is brought to you by Happy Little Hug Factory and these amazing patrons. Extra special thank you to guest lecturer patron Brody Harris. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video. Hey there everyone, DMO73 here, bringing you a Wanderer feature match for this week. Jason and Josh bringing you a Wanderer Burn Tree variant. First is Dark Primogenitor. We were requested to have Primogenitor Gilapis 1 brought back. This is a very discard discard heavy list. It is pure mono black with Moon, and it's very discard heavy. There's a lot of discard options in this game, so we'll have to see kind of who comes out on top. Obviously, Jason's list is a kind of aggressive variant of Tree, making use of a lot of the kind of bringing stuff back and burn mechanic potentials, you know, kind of explosive, kind of closing out the game damage that Tree had to offer. Things like Split Heaven and Earth and stuff like that to help close out games. So, looks like Josh is going to be going on the play. First turn hits the Black Moon Memoria Thought Control. We're going to go ahead and see an Energize into Otherworld Dreams, which kind of does what it needs to do. And then off the Otherworld Dreams, he doesn't play anything, but instead plays 2 of the Earth Regalia. So the Earth Regalia lets Gilapis pay Moon for Judgment, as well as activate abilities of Resonators or activate abilities of Gilapis, which includes his God Art. So it could be very helpful. It's kind of quick ramp. First turn, we see a Ifrit Glass into a Memory to Memoria to bring back a card, the card that was RFG'd by Ifrit Glass. Ifrit Glass being the way to bring cards back from the remove from game by kind of destroying it. We see a Lapis's Darkstorm, and so this is your opponent discards a card kind of at random, and then they get to choose to discard a card. It's a very powerful discard effect for just 2 will. It ran pretty rampant in the time when it was printed in New Frontiers. Paying 2 life here for the Moonshade to play Faith in the Darkness. Just gonna get to dig the top 5 cards of his deck. He is playing Joan. And knowing that he's going against a Darkness deck, he doesn't really have to worry about True Blade. That's another cool thing that's coming into this new format with the ban list, is there is no True Blade. See that Volga there. It's a little too early to probably play the Volga. The Sylvia is probably the better play. The Volga idea is you get your RFG really deep. You know, your opponent's swinging at you. You play a Volga and then immediately burn in with something like Torching the Timeline, so then your opponent just takes the rest of the damage. It's one of the burn elements that comes out. Space-Time Collapse from Josh after taking that 6 damage from the Sylvia. Because he's Gilapis, he gets to kill a Regalia and a creature. So kind of 2 for 1s there for 2 will. Another Sylvia coming down, swinging in for 6. He's going to have to just take it. Goes down to 28 damage. So very quick turns here for both of these decks. See a Shade, which is a little unfortunate for Josh, as she doesn't have access to life gain because it's Dark Tree. Pays 3 to do Judgment. 2 black and Moon. Gets to go into his deck to grab a Black Moon, which is Gilapis' cool little effect. So at this point in time, he can pay Moon and discard a card to bring a Resonator, or discard a Resonator to bring a Resonator back from his graveyard into his hand. But also, his ruler is Darkness, so now it gets a +2/+2 buff. So now Gilapis is the Primogenitor is a 14/14. And it does have that God Art, which is potentially useful in this matchup, being able to steal an addition, a Resonator, and a Regalia straight out of the deck. Essentially doing 3 damage while doing that. Double Joan to Arc coming down from Jason. Swinging in for 7, he's going to take it. Swinging in for 7, he's going to take it. Swinging in for 6, he's going to take that. I don't really understand why he wouldn't just force the Gilapis not to be able to block first, but the other thought is he can't really block the Genes anyway with the Gilapis because it gets those neg counters, so it didn't really matter which direction he swung in. I still would have been safe enough to just swing with the Sylvia first. So all the way down to 8 life pretty quickly, unfortunately. Looking at his will, looking at what he has, he's going to go ahead and do the God Art. So this lets him go into Jason's deck, grab an addition, a Regalia, and a Resonator, and put them all into the field. I mean, up to one of each of those things. So he's trying to grab the stuff. Obviously, there's an Ifrit Glass, which he can grab, potentially. I don't think there's really any additions that Jason's going to be playing. It's mainly going to be about what Resonator is going to get him the most value out of it, because he really needs to try to clear this board. And even then, it's just a little bit risky to be able to put himself down to 8 life so much, or be down to 8 life so quickly. Especially going against a deck that probably has a lot of burn pieces in it. Decides not to grab the Ifrit Glass, and I think that's actually in this position a pretty smart choice, mainly because it's another card in the deck that Jason could potentially draw that keeps him out of being, you know, playable. And the Sylvia he's going to grab, which is also pretty smart. So what he can do here is he can swing the Galapis into the Sylvia, kill it, swing the Sylvia into one of the genes, kill it, and then there will be only 1 gene left, and he will take, you know, the 7 damage from it, right? So he'll be down to 1 life, which is a little bit risky, but ultimately it's, you know, a matter of if Jason has anything with swiftness or a burn spell, he's dead, but at least he's made it so that he's not auto dead just so it's on field. And he actually happens to draw a red cap, so the game at that point is just over, and we move on to game 2. So in game 2 here, obviously Josh is hoping to hit kind of more of his discard stuff a little bit early, as well as being able to potentially hit some of those early game, if he has any kind of early game resonators to stop or kind of crack back against Jason for his aggressiveness. You see he has that dark red Riding Hood. That's probably a pretty good benefit. Josh getting a little bit ahead of himself with that Call for Stone, but his deck is mono black, so it doesn't really matter that he saw that Darkness Magic Zone for playing casually. Darkness Magic Zone comes up. We're going to see that first turn Thought Control. Cards in your hand that you're kind of looking at. There's a Lancelot, a Rezard. I'm not sure what that middle card is. Might be a Split Heaven and Earth and a Fetal Movement from the Outer World. Fetal Movement was another big, impressive burn spell back in the day. Moonshade for Jason, and then he says pass, which is excellent for Josh. Any turn that he's not dealing with a creature on board, especially since Jason did have access to Energize, could have been potentially really bad. He's going to get to do the Lapis Darkstorm, hits the Fetal Movement, that's really good. Was a Faith in the Darkness. Pitches a Rezard, which is probably the right call, considering the fact that he has a Rezard Enhance. We can like RFG it by paying 2 life. Black Silence. Doesn't have a way to cast a Lancelot because he doesn't have access to double red. Can cast the Faith in the Darkness, which I think is the right call. Interestingly enough, chooses to use the Moonshade. I probably would have used the Energized coin, personally, because the Moonshade can convert into any will that he needs to, just to be able to have it for the next turn, potentially. Joan d'Arc's going to come out. It's going to get those tokens because it was brought out by Faith in the Darkness, so 9 damage coming at Josh. Josh calls for Stone, hits that Black Moon. Going to go ahead and do Soul Hunt. Discarding Charlotte's Protector, which actually just means that Josh gets to draw a card, and then Lapis Darkstorm just to rip those last 2 cards out of Jason's hand. So this is actually a really strong position for Josh to be in. Here's why. He hasn't done any damage to Tree, right? So at this point in time, Tree doesn't have access to anything to be able to RFG. So he's literally just top decking. And he happens to get the Sylvia, which is really, really nice, so 6 damage there. But at the same time, Josh is a deck that has things like Soul Hunt, or as you see there, there's that Red Riding Hood. So there's a lot of different things that he can kind of make use of, and if Jason ever has kind of a dead draw hand, or a dead draw turn, then you see he's got things like Thought Control, and lots of discard stuff to be able to get rid of him. Uses the Space-Time Collapse here just to say, let's get rid of the Sylvia, I'll save the Dark Red Riding Hood for maybe when my life's a little bit lower, and then kind of crack back a little bit. Torching the Timeline comes up for Jason. It is a completely useless card at this point. He has 0 cards in his removed from game area. It's going to Thought Control that out of his hand anyway, so it's just gone. And then at this point in time, it's pretty safe for him to go ahead and do the Judgment. And so now it's even stronger position for Josh, mainly because of the fact that Gil Lapis's Primogenitor effect for 1 Moon lets him cancel an activate ability. So this means that if Tree tries to activate, he can just pay Moon and cancel it. So he's in a much safer spot here as long as Gil Lapis stays alive. Faith in the Darkness, trying to dig a little bit. See what he can see off the top of those 5. See a red cap. a Velsivarian Apparition, which is the creature that if it gets RFG, you get to put it into play. It's gonna go ahead and choose the red cap, which I think is the smart call here. Plus, because what he can do is he can swing in, force the block, right? Because Josh doesn't want to take damage as much as possible. Kill the red cap, and then he gets a shuffle, which puts that Velsivarian potentially back towards the top, and lets him get another 2 damage in, because at this point, Josh doesn't have a way to deal with the red cap that's going to get played afterwards. So it takes him down to 23. So Josh is in a pretty good position here. He still have access to Goddard. He still has access to lots of different stuff. He could potentially flip back his Guild Lapis if he was going to get killed for some strange reason, because that's one of the effects of the Earth Regalia. See, there's that Soul Hunt. Doesn't really need the Soul Hunt right now. It would pretty much be a -1 at this point. Now would probably be a pretty safe time to play that Dark Red Riding Hood. Goes ahead and swings at Jason for the 14 damage. And the reason why this is safe right now is, again, because he has 2 Moonwill available at this point. So if he ever tries to activate anything to try to grab anything back, whether that be the Ifrit class or Trees effect, he can just cancel it for 1 Moonwill and essentially punish it. So it's going to be pretty hard for Jason at this point to be able to access anything from his RFG. So at that point, it becomes pretty safe. And unfortunately, there you see that Black Moonbeam gets hit, which is really, really unfortunate for Jason. So I don't know if Jason plays multiple, but again, with Lapis being able to stop him from being able to grab stuff from the RFG, unless he just plays the spell, happens to top deck into the spell, he's in a pretty poor position because that Lapis is just going to stick around. That Dark Red Riding Hood comes out, which now is going to be able to deal with the red cap, so Josh is essentially able to stop the bleeding from the aggression. See, there's a Soul Hunt and a Lapis Darkstorm in his hand. It just has to pass, unfortunately, which is completely fine for Josh. Again, he could choose to use the Soul Hunt here. There's really no point, because if that card wasn't relevant enough for Jason to cast it, it's probably not relevant enough for him to discard it, and he would end up probably losing more because Jason then can just go get another red cap. So probably the call here, if I was in Josh's position, what I probably would have done was swing with the Dark Red Riding Hood, killing the red cap, and then getting the swing in, and then forcing him to have another red cap in hand. So at that point in time, he can force the brain turn on. He can force him to have 2 cards in his hand and maximize the value of that Lapis Darkstorm. So even though he flashed in the Lorite, he just, to cancel the effect 1 time to stop the tree effect, he just used Lapis again to cancel the tree effect. And now he's going to swing in with that Red Riding Hood, hits the red cap, and then or he hits the Lorite and then blocks with the red cap or whatever the combination is, just to avoid taking that damage. They're counting the deck size right now, so he kind of knows, Josh knows whether or not he needs to swing in. Now, Josh could do the same thing right now, as he could just choose to say, let's go ahead and Soul Hunt. I'll get rid of that card, but he loses so much value off of it that way. I think it would have been much smoother, not that he's not in a strong position anyway, but it potentially would have saved him even more will to just say, I'm going to swing first, force you to have 2 cards in your hand, and then maximize the value off of a Lapis Darkstorm. Because at this point, there's still a red cap in his hand. Jason would have ended the turn with 0 cards in that regard. Couple Velsivarian apparitions get to come out, so now he has a couple creatures. Those are just 4/4s. So thankfully for Josh, he's not going to be taking enough damage for lethal anytime soon. And Max right now with what's known in hand 10 damage, which he's perfectly comfortable with, knowing that he's probably going to deck out Jason next turn. He's going to use that tree effect, go grab a Rezard. He's out of Moonwill, so stops him at that point. He's going to take the 8 damage from the Velsivarians. Paying 200 life, goes down to 36, and then plays the red cap, swings in for 2, taking Josh down to 13. So Jason right now is threatening lethal, which is a pretty good comeback. That's the interesting part about Velsivarians, is they don't seem very strong, but they can be very free when your opponent thinks that they're safe enough to be able to kind of swing in. So Josh is going to swing in with the little red, attempting to kill the Rezard. At that point in time, in response to the trigger, he's going to flash in Lorite. Lorite's going to enter, and in response to Lorite's effect, Josh does something a little bit interesting here, and he doesn't know Jason's list, right? So he has to guess based on how many Lorites he's seen get played or RFG'd. He's actually going to try to God's Art to get Lorite out of the deck for the sake of saying, okay, well, I'm going to use your Lorite, have it enter and cancel your Lorite's effect, so then my Lorite, you know, my Dark Red Riding Hood trigger is going to happen. Unfortunately, that doesn't work because there's no Lorites in Jason's list, so instead he says, okay, let's be safe about it. I'll go ahead and grab the Joan d'Arc, who is at this point undestructible because I have 3 cards. He can't block with the Rezard because the Rezard would still get killed by Death Touch, right? So at 2,000 or less life, Dark Red Riding Hood gets that Death Touch ability, and then at 1,000 or less, you have Swiftness. But if he does decide to block with the Rezard, then he's just going to lose it and be back to square one, which is not where he wants to be. So he just decides, I'm going to throw the Lorite under the bus. So at this point in time, the Joan of Arc is actually pretty beneficial, right? Because it can stop the Rezard without having to die, and he can still cancel a tree effect. And he actually chooses to call Stone, which I think is a little interesting, mainly because he wants the second Moonwill. He gets lucky there and does hit the second Black Moon Memoria off the top. It was a little risky in my opinion, but it definitely paid off. I probably would have just kept it open. Especially knowing, that he was only going to get 1 tree activation off, and we've already know he has no Lorites left in his deck. It's better to just leave up the extra blockers. Maybe he thought, I might as well just call the extra stone so I have the extra access to a will or something like that. But having already known the fact that there are no Lorites left, I think just makes it so that you just know that Gil Lapis is going to only have to spend 1 will to be able to stop a Rezard. Jason spending some life here, paying 400 life to exile the 2 Rezards that are in the graveyard. Knowing here that because of the Joan d'Arc, he can't possibly get lethal, he's going to try to do as much damage as possible. So he goes in for 2 damage, and then he's going to go ahead and swing with the Velsivarians and say, I'll go ahead and take you down to 3. So really at this point, threatening lethal from all directions and saying, forcing Josh to answer, forcing Josh to kill him on the crackback, which is a little bit threatening, right? The problem is he's pretty low on cards, and now if Josh happens to get something like another Dark Red Riding Hood or something like that, it's going to have Swiftness, which is really not so good, because it's going to be able to kill that Rezard that's in the way, and we already know that there's no Lorite. So it's a little bit tricky here. Unfortunately, I think it's just a situation where Jason can't possibly defend from the play lines that Josh has available to him. And just to be safe, if we're going to go ahead and do Space-Time Collapse to try to kill the Rezard, even before Red Riding Hood has to swing, going to try to Otherworld Dreams it. Now, so here's an interesting line of play that could happen here. He's not going to follow up with the Otherworld Dreams, but what he could do here is he could discard, in response to the Otherworld, before it resolves, he could discard to the Moon to grab the Shardless Protect, to discard a Shardless Protector to grab something back from his grave. I don't know if he has a Resonator in grave at this point, but if he does, cycle it, get that creature back into his hand, and draw a card from Protector, and potentially get a follow-up card off of the Otherworld Dreams. He doesn't. He saves with the will to be able to hit the Dark Tree play anyway, but then just swings in with the little red, and then swings in with the Gil Lapis to do the deck out. So discarding definitely, and then kind of forcing him to be in top deck mode with no RFG cards definitely helps the Primogenitor list significantly against Dark Tree. They don't really have a good way to just recover a lot of resources, especially after it really gives Primogenitor the ability to then lock out the game by getting to his flip. Jason is going to be going on the play. Doesn't have to worry about Josh having Energize. Ifrit Glass comes into play. So the card removed from game is looks like a Faith in the Darkness. We have a basic Darkness Stone. So we see a Thought Control coming out. We're going to discard the Faith in the Darkness, especially knowing that he can't possibly get to that Lancelot next turn with having seen a first turn Black-Green Stone. Might as well stop him from being able to have any kind of aggression early on. Unfortunately, Jason decides to play the Felled Sevarian just to stick a creature on board, which I think is kind of not the best call, knowing what he's seen, because I believe he's probably going to lose 2 cards here at this point. Oh, it's interesting. He placed the Space-Time Collapse to kill them both. I don't know if he has a Soul Hunt in hand. If he would, that would have been really powerful. But maybe he just says, okay, I'm just going to take the damage, or maybe he's saving it potentially for something like a Lancelot. Jason's going to pay 2 life here, go down to 38, play the Lancelot, and swing for 6. Jason already running really low on cards. There's the Soul Hunt. Picking what he's going to go ahead and discard the Lorite. Josh is going to discard the Shardless Protector, so really he lost absolutely nothing, and he can follow it up with the Lapis Darkstorm. He has the Otherworld Dreams, but he has the second Lapis Darkstorm just as the follow-up, so just forcing Jason to be at completely no cards. Does RFG a card, Torching the Timeline doesn't really do anything for him. You probably would crack the Ifrit class right now just to get that Faith in the Darkness back. The problem becomes the fact that he, well, might see another Soul Hunt. So then you'd just be even further behind at that point. See a Judgment happen. So Gilap is going to flip over here. He has left himself a little bit of an opening, right? So Lapis won't have any way to cancel anything this turn. But the problem is Josh doesn't have to be aggressive. Josh can just put him into a place where he has to purely rely on those top decks, not be able to use Tree, and then set him into an unwinnable game state. Does happen to see a Faith in the Darkness from off the top of the deck, which is pretty helpful, potentially seeing a card here. A Donut Arc would be pretty nice. Unfortunately, doesn't see nearly as much as what he wants. He sees a Rezard, which is okay. Rezard would be potentially pretty good to help him start paying life to then get other cards removed from the game and start recycling them. So at least kind of brings him back. Debating how much life he wants to pay here, or if there's anything even worth removing from the game at this point. Gonna go ahead and pass the turn. After calling for Stone, of course. Yeah, Josh is pretty safe here to call for Stone. The Rezard's not going to be hitting him for a ton of damage, and I imagine we're probably going to see a Soul Hunt or something like Space-Time Collapse to hit those 2 cards. The problem here is Josh is just going to let him pay the life to RFG as many cards as he wants, and then when he cracks the Ifrit Glass to try to bring something back, you're just going to see Gil Lapis cancel the effect, essentially making it so that he's going to pay a bunch of life, do a bunch of work for Jason, everything's going to get RFG'd, and then he's going to lose the Ifrit Glass anyway with no effect. And he'll still have Moonwill up afterwards to be able to cancel the tree effect next turn. So once again, Jason will be stuck in top deck mode. Decides not to pay any life, at least at first. He attempts to crack the Ifrit Glass and says, nope, I'm going to respond, canceling the effect, just send everything to the grave. And at that point in time, seeing the Sylvia, Jason just knows it's over, so he extends the game. So thanks to these guys for the match. Deck profiles updated this week. Until next time, this is DMO73, signing off.